and the first presentation is by Patrick Hanks from the University of Wolverhampton, and the title of his presentation is Words are ambiguous, but patterns are unambiguous.
Thank you, Carol. I need my notes from over there, so just a moment. It's okay. I know what I'm looking for, I think. Thank you. Okay. So one of the themes of this conference is lexical resources, presenting strategies for structured dynamic presentation of linked lexical data. I'm going to offer a new interpretation of the word linked. And I'm going to tell you that after 30 years as a lexicographer, I reached the uncomfortable conclusion that words don't have meanings. But I rescued myself by saying that they have meaning potential. Meaning potentials are activated in different ways of each word by context. Contexts can be found in patterns in a large corpus. So I've gone from being a lexicographer to being a corpus analyst. So I'm asking some really fundamental questions. What is meaning? How does language work? A theory-laden question. It looks innocent enough, but believe me, it's very theory-laden. How do people use words to make meaning? I'll leave you to figure out the theoretical implications of that approach. I've already said words don't have meanings. They are used in patterns. So the theory of norms and exploitations, which we're investigating in Wolverhampton, I'm investigating with my colleague Sarah Morget. Stand up, Sarah, and thank you. You now sit down again. Is a new approach to studying lexis and meaning, Corpus Pattern Analysis. It's not that new, because I've been doing it for a long time. So the idea is to identify, not ask about what does this word mean, but ask what patterns does it occur in, and attach meanings to patterns, not to words. I'll do this very quickly because we're short of time. Many of you have heard, those of you who've heard me lecture before have heard this example before. What's the meaning of blow? Well, anything you answer, I'm going to contradict. If you say it's what the wind does, I'll say it's what I do to money, and so on. Same with blow up. Blowing up a building is different from blowing up a balloon. And if I blow up intransitively, I lose my temper, and so on. So words, I think, are hopelessly ambiguous. The astonishing early finding of corpus linguistics, those bits of corpus linguistics that are aimed at studying meaning, is that patterns are unambiguous, appear to be unambiguous. Now the challenge is what counts as a pattern. I'll go through this very quickly. 12% of uses of blow are to do with something like the wind blowing, usually in a certain direction. But a gale was blowing is perfectly grammatical in English. No direction. There's an implicit direction. A gale has to blow in a particular direction. And looking ahead, it isn't only gale, it isn't only wind, it's also a breeze, a light air, a hurricane, a typhoon, and so I expect you've read the rest of this slide. If you haven't, you can have copies of the slides later. Idioms are, in our definition, patterns where the lexical sets are severely impoverished. If you blow your own trumpet, you can't talk about somebody blowing their own bugle, still less about blowing their own clarinet and activate the same meaning. But of course you can if you're exploiting the norm to blow your own trumpet, and in some contexts where clarinets are particularly relevant. So that's how language works. Blowing the whistle on someone or on the government, you don't need a whistle to be a whistleblower, and so on. So we've got the problem of idiomaticity, which also is solved by this kind of presentation of words in patterns. The bottom line of this presentation of blow, very brief glance at blow, is that it's impossible to learn all possible uses of a word. Word use is infinitely expandable. So we're doing something very different from what Corey was talking about this morning, earlier this morning. We're not searching for new words and new meanings. We're searching for the way the central core works. And we're creating a pattern dictionary of English verbs, which I've been doing for about 10 years, and in Brno and in Wolverhampton, and we're still working together. Are there any Brno people here? Mostly Brno people at this conference. Anyway, we get tremendous support from the Masaryk University Faculty of Informatics. Thank you to you and your colleagues. The aim is to find the patterns with which each word is being associated. In this talk, I'm going to say that everything that I've said so far applies very neatly to verbs and to predicative adjectives. Quite recently, in the last couple of years, I've been starting to ask, what about nouns? The second half of this talk, if we get this far, Madam Chairman, will be about nouns. So, what is a pattern? Well, a pattern consists of a syntagmatic structure. For verbs, it is subject and the verb itself, the predicator, and zero, one, or two objects. This is very Hallidayan. And an adverbial, otherwise known in Halliday's grammar as an adjunct, which is not what generative grammarians call an adjunct. Linguistics is a terminological minefield, quagmire, any metaphor you like. It's probably a quagmire with mines in it. But the point is that, as John Sinclair said in 1998, many, if not most, meanings require the presence of more than one word for their normal realization. If we're going to study meaning, then what lexicographers do is wrong. Because we look at, as lexicographers, we look at words in isolation, and then we look at some contexts, but we don't try to systematically generalize over contexts. And collocations must be grouped into lexical sets. Why? Because taking an idiom that Rosamund Moon mentions in her book on fixed expressions, which are not fixed at all, as she correctly points out, there's an idiom about shaking in your shoes, but you can also be quivering in your boots or quaking in your wellies. There's an example in one corpus I looked at with policemen quivering in their size 14s. We know what size 14s are. They must be some sort of footwear. So we need the lexical set, we need semantic types as a means of grouping collocates by some common feature, by their most common feature. We also need semantic types because many lexical sets are huge. So a problem of the sketch engine is, or the version of the sketch engine, you've probably moved on since I last looked, but a problem is that the argument human is not spotted by the sketch engine because there are so many lexical realizations of the semantic type human that we don't see it. And the same with physical object and event. But if we find 3 or 4 examples of grasping the nettle, again, we've got an idiom where the word has to be nettle. You can't Americanize this by talking about grasping the poison ivy, or if you did, you'd be being creative. So we have an ontology of only 220 semantic types, unless it's grown since I last looked. Where's VTech? Well, it may or may not have grown. Anyway, around 220 semantic types. It's almost so small that a normal lexicographer can carry it in his or her mind while doing lexical analysis. And we can certainly memorize the most frequent ones. And it's hierarchical, so a human is a physical object, amongst other things. There's multiple inheritance, so it's also a human can be a cognitive object and so on, and a legal entity. But both of them go up the hierarchy, just as in WordNet, except we're dealing with concepts, not... we're using concepts to classify lexical items, whereas WordNet uses words to classify other words. So there are 2 top types in our ontology. One is entities, and the other is eventualities. And eventualities are called eventualities because we want to include states of affairs, static events. So we call them anything that is both static and active is an eventuality. And these semantic types serve to disambiguate the verbs. These semantic types, when applied to nouns, serve to disambiguate the verbs with which they co-occur. Okay, it's changed colour. This is part of, it's changed colour, I think, as part of the war between Microsoft and Apple. I've been caught in the crossfire this week. I won't take the rest of the lecture telling you the sad story of my week, but it's a very sad story. Okay, so we look at the verb grasp. We look at the physical we look at the direct object. You grasp horns, you grasp the edge of something. Oh, good God, I've only just started. You grasp a handle, you grasp a creature, you grasp somebody's hand, you grasp Maggie, they're all physical objects. You grasp the truth, you grasp the rules, they're all mental objects. Moving on, let's see what colour this is. Oh, this is interesting, at least it's systematic. I didn't intend it to be red. Of the abstract nouns are the devil to classify. They're extremely difficult, right, Sarah? Yeah. But we need to distinguish grasping an opportunity from grasping other kinds of mental objects or abstract nouns. Grasping a chance, an opportunity, and the moment turns out to be an honorary member of the set of opportunities. Then you have, in group 4, you have a set of, with the nettle, which I've already mentioned, grasping the nettle. Group 5 is the conative alternation, grasping at something, which means that you try to get it, but the speaker or writer does not commit himself or herself to the success of the grasping action. You grasp at the bedpost, you may never get there. And incidentally, generative linguists deny that this conative alternation exists, but then their evidence is their own beliefs. So, what can you say? Moving on. Oh God, right. No. I'm going to eat into question time. We're not going to have any questions. Yeah. Or I'll keep talking until I'm dragged out, kicking and screaming. We need a different. Okay, so that's roughly how we do verbs. Let's look on to nouns very quickly. The first thing to say is there's not a stable syntagmatic relation between the collocates in doing noun analysis. Hospitals and doctors co-occur in lots of sentences. They are clearly significant collocations in the corpora I've looked at, but there's no syntagmatic relationship, no normal thematic. Okay, and the other thing to say is that the verb collocates are stable, but the noun sets themselves are not necessarily stable. So you've got storms, hurricanes, and gales abating, and things that abate have the semantic type weather event, but they need the added property violent. You don't talk about a light breeze abating. Okay, so I took the word shower as an example, and I looked at all the collocates in the British National Corpus, not only those that I used the sketch engine for guidance, but I also looked at things that took my fancy in the corpus. And I found that there are all sorts, and you can make up a story like this, and this is tremendously important, I think, for learners, in order to learn how to talk about showers in English, should they ever wish to do so. You need to know, well, there are showers, and a shower is a weather event, and it's a short downpour of rain. But it's also, there are snow showers, wintry showers, hail and sleet showers, a heavy shower, a light shower. I won't go on. What do showers do? They sweep over or across locations. After a short time, a shower dies away or out. The shower is said to be clearing. What happens to people and showers? People get caught in a shower. This is all so boring that nobody but a lexicographer would bother to go through and classify it. It's important for understanding how the language works. Second group of senses, showers are provided by an architect. They are installed by a builder in a cabinet. Put it away, it makes me feel ill. or in the bathroom, or above the bath, or in a separate shower room, and so on. You starting to get the idea. A shower is an event. This is the weather event. But no, it isn't. This is in contrast to the weather event. A person takes a shower, has a shower, and it may be hot, cool, or cold, and it's refreshing. And this is language not typically used of a downpour of rain. Okay, and I think, oh my goodness, this looks like the end. So we're doing systematically we're creating a pattern dictionary of English verbs. We've done, how many is it? About 1,700? We've done 1,800. We will, unlike FrameNet, we'll know when we've finished because we know that in the British, thanks to Sketch Engine, we know that in the British National Corpus there are 5,600 and some items tagged as verbs, lemmatized as verbs. When we've done all of those, we've got a pattern dictionary of English verbs. We can then move on to predicative adjectives and nouns. And there are parallel projects going on with Irena Renau, Araki in Valparaiso, but I've left the accent off, I'm in disgrace. And Elisabetta Ježek, who despite her lovely Czech surname is Italian with a Dutch mother, at the University of Pavia. Okay, so that's it, thank you.
Well, thank you, Patrick, for this delightful and perfectly timed lecture. Are there any questions? I think we have time for 2 or 3 questions.
Oh, good. No, they're also gobsmacked. Oh.
Thanks, Patrick. I wonder what you think about the scope of your semantic types. Are your types, is it a fact of standard British English, or is it a fact of language, or is it a fact that could also be further subdivided into dialects?
Very good question. The first thing to say is that Elisabetta and I think Irena are using the semantic types with their English names for concepts that group together words in Spanish and Italian. So they are language universals. The next thing to say is that in the words of a paper that Elisabetta Ježek and I wrote, semantic types shimmer. So it's not the case that all semantic types, all members, all lexical items in a semantic type can be used everywhere that semantic type occurs. So the example Elisabetta and I give is you attend an event, such as a meeting, but there are some outliers, like attending a school. A school is not a meeting. It's not an event. But you go there for the event. It's a building, I think. But then you go there because of the events that take place there, and so on. So what we have to do, I'm sorry to have to say, is to study the lexical items of each argument of each verb independently, and we just use the semantic types as a grouping device, and we know that as we move from verb to verb, some words come in and others go out. But we think they're language universals or conceptual universals.
One last question.
Everybody's leaving. Oh no, you're not leaving, you're going to ask a question.
Sorry, I was just thinking that maybe this need for pattern analysis is bigger in English than in other languages that have a more developed inflectional system, like if you take Arabic or Finnish or something like that.
I didn't hear, but I didn't understand the question. What's the question? The question is,
Whether
is
the
it
need-
English specific? No, it isn't.
Yeah, I think that other languages with a more developed inflectional system has
Inflectional
more of this
system.
information
No.
in the
Okay.
words.
Okay, English and Chinese are word order languages, and the first step in corpus pattern analysis is to identify subject, verb, object, and adverbial. In inflected languages, you do it by looking at the endings. So they are inflectionally organized languages. They still tell you what the subject and what the object is. You still know if the bus hits the car. I don't know, busso, what's the bus hits the car in Czech? It'll have some inflections that tell you which is the subject, who's the guilty party, who did what to whom. And that, I think, is going to be universal for all languages but needs studying. Except German, of course, which has a bizarre mixture of both word order and inflection. But then German is interesting.
Well, thank you once more, Patrick.
Good.